this episode we take the sump off and lock that pesky oil pump nut on. So I'm using axle stones, as you can see it's a bit dark, trolley jack to get the car up in the air. I just like to put some wood underneath the wheels just in case the axle stands give up. Also I have to drive up onto a bit of wood so I can get the trolley jack under the front if it's quite low. So that's supposed to be able to handle 500 kilos. It's 150 centimeters long, which fits on the E46 engine bay. And then I've got my new Sump gasket. So I've got a spare oil pump nut. If I put it in front of the camera. So I'm going to try and drill a tiny little hole through one of the corner bits. Very small hole. And I've got some locking wire, so I'll be locking the nut to the spindle, and then I'll be using some Loctite as well. So I imagine I'm going to completely mess this up trying to drill a hole through it. That's why I bought a spare one. So you can see I've put the support bar in place. I can't actually move that out of the way. I can just sit there. So I'm just going to, I've taken the cap off the, I forget what they're called, pulley. So I just need to slacken it off. Hopefully with a T50. And then I can take the belt off. Always a good idea to take a photo of the layout of the belt, if you just to make things easier. So I've done that. So I'm just going to slacken that and take the belt off. So yeah, clockwise. Just going to hang that out the way somewhere. Just lean it over there. So I'm going to have to go under now. Take 3 bolts out, I think, for the power steering pump, so I can wiggle that out of the way. And then I'm going to drain the oil. It should be 3 13mm bolts. Good long extension you need for that first one. There, and then you've got one on the other side comes in from the front. So you can see the 3 different lengths. The short one was the first one on the bracket round the back, and the longer one was round the back, and then the sort of medium length one was from the front. Might lay them round that way to remind me. So I've taken the weight of the engine, I've jacked it up a few millimeters, so I'm going to wind this in. Just get everything nice and tight. If you've not had these off for a while, I would definitely recommend getting a blowtorch on them first. But hopefully these are alright, because you can see I've got the, well, you probably can't, I've got the PowerFlex bushes on them. They've been off fairly recently. I'm just going to put them back there so I don't lose them. time to remove the bolts that go from the subframe to the engine mount. So on mine it's a 16mm. I'm going to undo the anti-roll bar brackets as well. That's just a pair of 13s on each side. The big subframe bolts are 18mm in this car. But before I do anything, I'm going to have to put the trolley jack under the subframe to take the weight of it. Hey, right. So it's about 3 or 4 months later now. Life kind of gets in the way, and cold weather. So yeah, back on the Beamer now. Just been trying to figure out what the hell I was doing last time. So as I film now, all that coronavirus stuff is going on. I think we've been on lockdown for about 3 weeks. So at least, because I was sort of stressing before that I wasn't going to get the car done for when the track days start up, which is usually about April time where I live. So looks like I've got a bit more time to work on it now, so no rush, which is nice. I'm just trying to remember, trying to refresh myself because it's been like 3 or 4 months. So I've taken the nuts off. Where are we? From the subframe to the engine. I've undone the anti-roll bar brackets. The power steering pump is loose. I can't seem to find, I don't know whether my car's got it. It's an 04 model, but some of the other stuff I've looked at, I've got like a auto leveling headlights cable, but I can't see anything that's gonna stretch when I drop the subframe. So we'll see, we'll start dropping it and see if anything's catching. I disconnected the steering shaft. Hopefully that should drop out as I drop the subframe. Oh yeah, the ends, the lollipop bushes. Just see I'll put the bolts back in. They're undone. I'm going to unplug the oil level sensor, the bottom of the sump. I should just be able to get my trolley jack under the subframe with a piece of wood and start lowering it down. So this is what I've done now, is taken out or undone the 2 pairs of subframe bolts while taking the weight with my trolley jack and a piece of wood. The 2 ones that are nearest the front I couldn't get all the way out because they're hitting the tie rods. Yeah, so they can't get them out because of that. I mean, I could probably turn the steering and get them out, but don't really need to take them out. Those front ones, they can just sit there until it goes back up. So it was catching a bit. The front was coming down alright, the back was kind of being held by the steering shaft. That seems to, I gave it a bit of a pry and it seems to have dropped now. So you can start to see the underside of the sump. So let's see how I get on with it that low. If I need to drop it some more, I probably will. But I'm going to start undoing all the bolts. So you're going to find 5 bolts between the gearbox and the sump. There's 3 E10 ones, and then the rest are 10mm bolts. So you have to stick your socket about 20mm up into the housing to undo the 2 shorter ones, whereas the long one you can just see it on the underside. And I've just gone round and loosened all the 10mm bolts that go around the sump. They're all pretty easy to undo, didn't take much effort. What you do probably need is, for some of them for British cars, the passenger side, because of the way the engine's angled, I needed at least 2 extensions together to be able to reach some of them. So that's probably like 12-15 inches, or 30-45 centimeters, or about 40-45 centimeters. That's how much extensions you needed to reach some of the bolts. I think it needs doing anyway, because before I started undoing stuff, where the gearbox meets the sump, there was a few drips coming down from under there. Okay, after a lot of trying different things and swearing, we finally got the sump off. This bit near the pump, or the actual pump, it's got some black bits on it. I'll show you the actual sump in a minute, but what I ended up doing to be able to get the sump to drop out, because of the oil collection pipe, let's call it, because that gets in the way. So this is about as low as I got the subframe and power steering rack, or steering rack, sorry. So what I had to do was pull all this towards the front of the car, so it gave enough room at the back to drop the sump out behind the subframe. You just had to pull it enough forward so that it would miss the gearbox and drop out the back and clear this oil collection pipe. So that's what I'm doing all this for. It seems pretty rock solid on my fingers anyway, so that's good, I suppose. I'm not sure whether some of the later E46s, they did something to stop the problem with the nut undoing itself. Anyway, we're still gonna get some lock-in wire on it. So one other thing I did was this pipe here, power steering pipe, at the top it sort of comes round to by the bottom of the expansion tank is, and it's held in by 2 flimsy sort of clip things. So I had to undo both of them to give this some slack so the power steering pump could drop down out the way. I'm just resting it on the anti-roll bar, so there's no tension in any of the hoses above it. And then while I piss around with the sump, I've just put a little bit of pressure, lifted the jack up a bit just to take any strain or the weight of it. So there's the sump. Some nice black bits of oil in there. It's pretty bad. Don't know whether the owner before me didn't do regular oil changes, or whether that's just normal, I don't know. Wouldn't have thought so. So I'm going to give that a good clean. Still a bit pliable, the rubber bit on the gasket, but not like what it's supposed to be. I've just given it a clean with some what is it? Engine degreaser. Just giving it a bit of scrub with that and some water, and now I'm just gonna try a bit of degreaser. Leave that for a few minutes, give it a scrub, then wipe it out. Try and get some of these black bits off, especially where the gasket's got to go. Don't forget to fish out a little bugger of a seal in the where the dipstick goes into the sump. I'd looked already, I didn't think it was in there, but stuck my finger in and found it. So yeah, double check that that's not in there. So my the nut on my oil pump really didn't want to come off. I was in two minds just to leave it there because it took a lot of pressure to get it to undo. What I had to do was get like a tiny little pry bar or like a 10mm end and put it through one of the holes in the sprocket. And wedge it against that little flat bit you can see just next to the chain over there, sort of behind that. So do that in one hand and then turn your wrench with the other hand. It finally came loose, so I've just put my spare one on, just while I'm drilling the original one. So this is the lock-in wire I'm using. It's 0.8 millimeters in diameter. I think these drills are about 1 mil diameter. They're the smallest I've got. So I'll give them a go. I'm just going to use plenty of grease and drill it nice and slow. Much time later, many drills later, these drills have just been blunt pretty quickly. So luckily I've got a, I've been just trying to sharpen the tips and then reuse them, otherwise I would have gone through about 50 drills. I find the best technique is just not too much pressure. Obviously they're quite thin drills and they snap. But I was going for quite a fast speed. It seemed to be working. I was trying a slow speed at first, but it was pretty hopeless. So yeah, fast speed seemed to work. Just clean off this edge a bit. So that's about as good as I'm going to get it. I've given the sump a bit of a clean. Yeah, it's still a bit grubby on this side, but I'm not all that precious. So I've cleaned the surface where the gasket's going to go. As much as I can. This stuff, I don't know whether it's rust or what. Even when you scrape it, it doesn't come off. I don't know, I thought these were aluminium rust, I don't know. but the important side where the rubber bit of the gasket sits is clean. So you can see the gasket only goes on one way, because on one of the corners it's rounded. Probably to stop idiots like me putting it on the wrong way around. So I've cleaned the underside of the engine where the sump fits back on. There's 4 spots you've got to put a bit of sealant on. I just got some red RTV gasket maker. That's what I used when I did my rocker cover gasket, I think. So I think there's 4 points. So at the front it's about there and there, and at the back where it meets the gearbox you can see the 2 lines where the metals, different metal is meeting. So you've got kind of one over here somewhere, one there, pretty much the 4 corners. So I'm going to get under the car, put a bit of sealant on, and then try and line this up and get it back on without the gasket falling off. So there's the sump back on. Got to tell you, it's a real pain in the ass on your own, because you're trying to, because this obviously goes on, the sump doesn't sit like horizontal, it's at an angle. So the gasket just wants to slide out down this way all the time. So if you're doing it like me, where you've got a trolley jack holding up all this stuff, then you kind of reach in under with one hand trying to hold the bulky bit at the back. You've got your other hand holding the front, trying to guide it up through that gap while trying to pull all this towards you to give enough clearance to come in from the back. And there all the time the gasket's trying to slide out the side. So I got a few bolts ready next to me so I could, as soon as I did manage to finally get it in place, I could throw a few bolts in finger tight just to hold it in place. Definitely recommend getting a mate to help you if you can. So you're supposed to start tightening from the middle and sort of like the rocker cover, and you sort of work your way out to the outside, which just takes forever because if like me you have to keep crawling under all this shit every time. You end up doing about 3 rounds. Here's some lovely torque settings for you. And the ones I needed, unless I'm being a complete numpty, are down here, Sump to block. Which is supposed to be 10 for the M6 Newton meters. And then there was the transmission to engine bolts, which was the torque ones. I think mine were M8, which was 22 is what I did them at. So hopefully that's right. Join me on the next episode where we'll be changing the engine mounts and we'll be putting the subframe back on and all the other bits down below. Thanks for watching, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one. Cheers.